You know, a good deal of the countdowns I've done this year have been related to the stories of video games. Might as well continue that trend with, by definition, the most unpredictable element of any story that has it, well, except for Arkham Knight, the plot twist. Ever since, arguably, Super Mario Bros., video games have had plot twists in them. I don't think I really have to go into too much detail, it's just a big reveal that catches you off guard. But there is one thing I think I do have to clarify. The rules. One per franchise and only games I have played. That last one especially, because I know there's going to be some story-heavy game out there that has a really iconic plot twist that won't be on this list because I've never played the game. Also, spoilers. No worry, I'll make it pretty clear to you which game is being spoiled beforehand. But with all that out of the way, let's begin.
Kindly get this. Would you kindly find that? Would you kindly find that? Would you kindly find? Would you kindly get this? Would you kindly head to Ryan's office and kill the son of a bitch?
You know, there are a lot of games out there that have really intelligent, well thought out plot twists that completely shatter your perception of everything you've known up until this point and force you to look at plenty of scenes earlier on in a completely new light. This twist is not one of those. In Icarus Uprising, you're led to believe that Medusa is the main villain of the game, and if you saw my last video, you already know where I'm going with this. She's not, it's Hades. Like I said, this isn't exactly meant to be a thought-provoking twist. Sure, there was some light hinting at it earlier on, particularly in the chapter where you fight Medusa, but that's about it. The reason this twist is on the list is because of the spectacular way in which it's revealed. Hades doesn't just show up after Medusa's defeated. Oh no, you defeat Medusa, you see her crumble away into dust, and then the credits play, and you see Pit and Palutena talking with each other, and it really seems like things are wrapping up. But then you hear Hades. At first, he politely tries to get their attention, and when that doesn't work, he literally rips through the credits. And then he proceeds to go on a fittingly hilarious monologue about how he's the true leader of the underworld, and how things are only just getting started. Now, I've seen plenty of twist villains out there. In fact, a good deal of twist villains are going to be on this list. But I don't think I've ever seen one that introduces themselves in such an over-the-top and insane way. And it's perfectly fitting for a game as ridiculous as Icarus Uprising and a villain as hilarious as Hades.
Would you kindly head to Ryan's office and kill the son of a bitch?
Undertale is a game that subverts a lot of the typical tropes of RPGs. Is a statement I've said quite a bit this year. I don't know why, it's not like I've played it recently. I guess it's just been a really good candidate for a lot of the topics I've been picking. Now, there are several twists about the actual story that's been going on around you, but there's also a plot twist involving the gameplay, which honestly had much more of an impact on me. You see, the main gameplay mechanic of Undertale is mercy. You can spare any enemy you come across, but you won't get any XP from them, so you won't get stronger. But notice how I said XP and not experience. You see, at the beginning of the game, Flowey introduces the concepts of XP and LV to you. Now, anyone who's played pretty much any other RPG would know that XP typically stands for experience points, which you get from beating enemies, and it goes towards you leveling up, which is what LV would stand for. Now, Flowey tells you that LV stands for love, but at the same time, this is when he's pretending to be your friend, so it seems more than likely that that's just something he made up. I mean, remind me again why you would get love from killing people? But that's besides the point. Right before you fight Asgore, you go through the Judgment Hall, where you come across Sans, and he judges you based on how high of a level you've gotten. But before he does so, he gives you a bit of exposition and you realize those acronyms didn't stand for what you thought they stood for. XP doesn't stand for experience, it stands for execution points. And as for love, which apparently wasn't made up by Flowey, it stands for level of violence. That's right, Undertale's level progression system isn't based on you getting stronger. It's based on you getting more psychotic and willing to kill people. So yeah, unlike any other RPG that would applaud you for finishing the game with a high level, here, that's the last thing you want.
Would you kindly head to Ryan's office and kill the son of a bitch?
In LEGO City Undercover, the goal is to arrest LEGO City's most infamous criminal, the recently escaped Rex Fury. In order to do this, you have to, as the title would imply, go undercover and infiltrate the various gangs of LEGO City, and eventually work your way up to Rex. But the big twist here that gets revealed late into the game is that Rex isn't at the top of the food chain. There's someone above him giving him orders. And that someone is Forrest Blackwell, the eccentric, reclusive billionaire that you encounter several times earlier in the game. When this first came around, I was decently surprised by this plot twist. Sure, they kinda gave it away before the big reveal, but even then, both those scenes happen in the same level, so it's not like they give it away too early before the actual reveal. Now, were there any other indicators beforehand that Blackwell was the true villain? Well, there were a few.
Give Mr. Blackwell some privacy. He merely wishes to go somewhere mysterious for secretive reasons he doesn't want you to know about.
To have your plans thwarted by fools. But what can you do? You either ignore it and get on with your life,
Or you go mad.
yes, mad.
Or you could sneak behind their backs and get your own way without them knowing.
The third option. Don't tell anyone. But that's the one I favor. Farewell, Chase McCain. I'm sure we will meet again.
Okay, now I know what you're thinking. Defoffilizer, how did you not see this coming? They made it painfully obvious. Well, for one, I was like 14 when I first played the game, but there is another reason. You see, LEGO City Undercover is a game that's filled to the brim with really hilarious and eccentric characters. Not only that, but it's also filled to the brim with movie references that are hilarious either way, but seem completely random if you've never seen the movie. So when you hear Blackwell talking about fools thwarting his plans, it just seems like kind of a joke, just a quirk of his personality, like all the other eccentric characters in the game. And even his evil laugh and handshake with Chase, you can easily just write it off as a reference to some random movie. Plus, you're pretty inclined to like him in that scene after this.
Mr. Blackwell, I am so relieved you're safe. I can barely sleep.
Thank you again, Chase. You sleep during work hours?
I don't know, maybe I was just being an idiot and not seeing what was in front of me, but I see this plot twist as the game shouting at you through a megaphone that Blackwell's the bad guy, but there being so much background noise that you hardly even notice. And I think that's a pretty creative and hilarious way to go about a plot twist.
Would you kindly head to Ryan's office and kill the son of a bitch?
One thing that all three of the Telltale Sam & Max games have in common is that they all have twist villains. The funny part about this is that these games are all released episodically, and almost every single episode has its own villain, so they almost don't even need a twist villain at the end. But it's always nice when they include one. In the first game, it's Hugh Bliss, and they make it kind of obvious, but at the same time, they make fun of the fact that it's obvious. In the second game, it's the Soda Poppers, which I don't care what anyone says, that is a hilarious twist. But it's the third game that gets on this list. You see, in the third game, Sam & Max The Devil's Playhouse, they introduce a narrator, which is kind of confusing considering the fact that the first two games didn't have a narrator. Is this guy supposed to be the devil because the game's called The Devil's Playhouse? Well, that wouldn't make any sense because the devil was already a character in the Sam & Max games, and this is not him. So I didn't think much of it and just assumed he was there to add to the atmosphere and suspense, which this game does have more of than the first two. Keyword being more. It's still really goofy because, well, it's a Sam & Max game. At the beginning of the final chapter, the narrator says that one of the characters on screen will betray Sam & Max, and he shows pictures of just about every character other than Sam & Max. So you spend the first half of the game thinking about who the traitor will be until it turns out that, oh, it's the narrator. Okay, yeah, now it makes sense. I mean, the narrator had to have a purpose, and it turns out he was the villain. The trick they played in the beginning was so clever, I actually laughed when I realized it. It's one of those things that you never see coming, but it's super obvious in hindsight. Even the way they reveal the twist is funny. The narrator goes through this whole spiel trying to keep you guessing, but before he can actually reveal it, Sam walks in on him, giving it away. Not only is the twist funny, but it's also interesting. thing. You see, the narrator is Max's superego, which, for those who've never taken psychology, is basically the angel on your shoulder. Now, considering the fact that Max is a creature of nothing but impulse, you immediately see the problem there. Also, not only does he explain the game's title, which was kind of a mystery up until that point, but it also makes perfect sense why he would be the narrator. I mean, the whole game is about Max gaining these psychic powers, so who better to narrate it than a construct within Max's own mind? I'd say the true villain was staring you in the face the whole time and you never even noticed, but that's kind of the nature of twist villains in general. Well, at least the good ones anyway.
Would you kindly head to Ryan's office and kill the son of a bitch?
Well, looks like we got another twist villain. Sort of. It'll make sense when I explain it. You see, the plot of Epic Mickey is that Wasteland, a world for all the forgotten and unwanted cartoon characters, gets decimated by the Blot, a monster that Mickey accidentally created, and it eventually pulls him back into Wasteland and he has to fight his way out. Despite the fact that the Blot's influence can be seen just about everywhere you go, he doesn't actually appear on screen that much after the beginning of the game. The first big on-screen appearance after then is after you've gathered all the parts to your rocket ship to escape. Oswald calls you over to Mickey Junk Mountain because the Blot's attacking, and you have a fight with him, and the boss fight's pretty good, but it starts to raise a couple questions, like, yeah, the Blot's big, but does he seem big enough to be the cause of all this? And he's definitely powerful enough to make it a challenging fight, but powerful enough to bring the entire apocalypse to Wasteland? Luckily, those questions get answered immediately after the fight with the reveal of why the Blot was on Mickey Junk Mountain. Was he doing it to take out Oswald because he knew that was his base of operations? No, he was going for the bottle. Now what's in this bottle? Very simple, the Blot. You see, the reason Wasteland is so tame compared to the flashback scenes is because the real Blot has been sealed away inside this bottle. The shadow Blot you've been told about throughout the entire game and all the enemies you've been fighting, they're just a small percentage of the real Blot that leaked out through the bottle. I know it's a really simple twist, but it adds a huge level of intimidation to the Blot. I mean, when you first encounter it, it's plenty intimidating already, but once you find out that that thing you've been worried about the entire game is only a fraction of the real threat, that's when things really get serious.
Would you kindly head to Ryan's office and kill the son of a bitch?
While there are a lot of conflicts in Infamous 2, the main one is the Beast, a giant monster rampaging through the East Coast. The main goal of the game, aside from taking down Bertrand, is collecting enough blast cores to charge up the RFI, a machine designed to kill the Beast. However, while you've been worrying about the giant monster and the religious dictator, there's been a more subtle threat permeating the game. That threat is an incredibly lethal and contagious plague with no known cure. While the plague lurks around in the background for most of the game, it starts to gain more relevance once the Beast makes it to New Marais. You see, as it turns out, the Beast isn't a mindless creature hell-bent on destruction. He's actually one of Cole's friends from the first game. So why is he killing all these people? Well, not for the reason you'd think. You see, the way his powers work is that they cause a big explosion which kills the vast majority of people, but the small percentage of people that are conduits, not only do they gain superpowers, but they're also cured of the plague. And when you talk to John, it's clear that he's not thrilled with the plan. He doesn't like the fact that he has to kill so many people, but at the same time, he sees it as the only way. This twist is great, not only because it adds a ton of depth to what seemed like would just be a one-dimensional villain, but also because it sets up what I consider to be one of, if not the most interesting moral dilemma I've seen in a video game. Because as it turns out, there's only one other potential cure to the plague, the aforementioned RFI, which, if set up, will not only kill John, but all the other conduits that were guaranteed to survive because of him. And unlike John's very unpleasant plan, the RFI isn't guaranteed to cure the plague. Given what it's designed to do, it might cure the plague, but the only person who would know for sure died pretty early in the game. So yeah, from this one twist, the game just got a lot more complicated.
Would you kindly head to Ryan's office and kill the son of a bitch?
You know, when people talk about super complicated video game stories, they typically run to Kingdom Hearts and Metal Gear Solid. And while I'm not super familiar with either of those series storylines, I get why people consider them the most complicated. However, when it comes to storylines that are super confusing on purpose, I can't think of a better example than the Hotline Miami franchise. And the interesting part of this is the fact that the first game actually started off pretty simple. You play as Jacket. Well, that's not his actual name, but no one knows his real name, so the fans just call him Jacket because he wears a Letterman jacket. He gets phone calls telling him to go to a certain place, he goes to said place, and kills everyone. And every now and again, he'll meet up with a couple of other masked figures who talk to him about how violent he's being, as well as ask him some fairly cryptic questions and give several cryptic predictions for the future. These scenes are a bit weird, but that's just all they seem like, a bit weird. But everything is put in perspective once you clear chapter 11. Jacket gets shot in the head and wakes up in the hospital. In other words, he's been in a coma this entire time. These first 11 chapters aren't actually what happened. They're just Jacket's comatose recollections of what happened. In other words, this whole time we haven't had a reliable narrator. Those three people in the animal masks, they weren't real, they were just Jacket's inner voices. Richard's predictions, they all came true, but not in the ways you would expect. Everything that Richard said during those scenes is now put into a whole new perspective. Heck, the whole fight with Biker earlier in the game, it shows Jacket brutally killing him, but as it turns out, Biker survived. Thanks to this twist, you don't know what information given to you earlier you can actually trust, what actually happened, and what was just influenced by either what Jacket wanted to happen or what Jacket thinks is the case. This is the moment where the Hotline Miami series went from kinda confusing to, oh my god, what the hell is going on?
Would you kindly head to Ryan's office and kill the son of a bitch?
The main gimmick of Broken Age is that you're playing through two storylines at once, and you can switch between them at any time. One of the stories is starring a teenage girl named Vela, who's about to be sent to the Maiden's Feast to be sacrificed to a monster called Mog Chothra. However, she escapes and then sets out to kill Mog Chothra. The other story revolves around Shay, a teenage boy who's been living on a spaceship pretty much his entire life, but the spaceship is clearly designed for babies and there's not really much for him to do. That is until a wolf named Merrick offers him a chance at adventure by flying the spaceship over to certain areas of the galaxy where a war's going on to save civilians. Now, I know what you're thinking, and it's the same thing I thought when I first played the game. What the heck do these two storylines have to do with each other? I mean, they have to have something to do with each other, right? They wouldn't be placed side by side with each other if they were completely unrelated. And the game does give you a couple possibilities. Shay's mother talks about having to make a big sacrifice, which sounds like the Maiden's Feast, and Vela meets a guy who looks like an older version of Shay. So wait, did Vela's story happen first, or Shay's? Well, as it turns out, neither. They both happened at the same time. You see, at the end of Act 1, with the help of the Deadeye God, Vela finally takes down Mog Chothra. Meanwhile, when Shay heads off to Prima Doom and tries to save one last creature, his ship ends up getting shot at. As it turns out, this was the exact same event. Shay's ship was Mog Chothra. The creatures that he's been saving were actually the maidens that were being sacrificed. And the one that kept getting away, the one that Shay wanted to save so badly, was Vela. So yeah, in other words, the two main characters of this game have been fighting each other the entire time and they didn't even realize it. And the thing is, the game doesn't immediately spell it out either. It just simply reveals that Mog Chothra was actually Shay's ship, and then you start to put all the pieces together. The number of rescue missions matches the number of Maiden's Feasts in the game, and the number of creatures at each one matches the number of maidens at each one, including the ones that Shay couldn't save. In other words, the ones that didn't get caught. It really is an insane twist. The whole game, you've been seeing the exact same story just from 2 different perspectives, and you didn't even realize it.
Would you kindly head to Ryan's office and kill the son of a bitch?
Danganronpa is a series that's filled to the brim with plot twists, which makes a lot of sense considering the fact that the whole series is about solving murder mysteries, so of course there's going to be a lot of twists. Despite that though, choosing one for this list really wasn't that hard, as the biggest twists in the game always come in the final chapter. Danganronpa 2's finale had some good reveals, but a lot of it was more so meant as world building rather than being really shocking. And Danganronpa V3, let's just say I have very mixed feelings on that game's final chapter. What I'm getting at is that neither of them were able to top the massive reveal at the end of the first game. You see, in the original, there's talk of an event that likely involved Hope's Peak called the Great Tragedy, which is described as the biggest, most awful, most tragic event in all of human history. Now, I don't know about you, but that sounds like a bit of an overreaction, don't you think? I mean, how bad could it really be? Well, in the final class trial, you're tasked with digging up all the secrets of Hope's Peak Academy, and you get to see the true nature of the Great Tragedy. They were not exaggerating. It is the end of the world. It's an entire Monokuma-based apocalypse. Now I know what you're probably first thinking. How the heck did this happen? Everything was normal when you went into Hope's Peak, and you were only trapped in for like, what, a month? Well, as it turns out, everyone in the game had been at Hope's Peak for quite a bit longer than that. A year to be exact. The reason Hope's Peak's inescapable isn't because Junko locked them in there. It's because everyone locked themselves in there in order to protect themselves from the tragedy. And they all agreed to stay inside Hope's Peak for the rest of their lives. But, due to events that are explained in the anime, the faculty didn't realize that Junko was the cause of this great tragedy, so they locked her in there with the other students, where she proceeded to erase all their memories and start up the killing game. And this twist puts an entirely new perspective on the way Monokuma was presenting the killing game. When he first addresses everyone, he doesn't mention they're going to kill each other. He says that they're going to be staying at Hope's Peak forever and that it's for their own good, which they already agreed to, they just can't remember it. He only presents the killing game as an alternative to all this, as an alternative to the thing they were already intending to do. It puts a whole new perspective on the motives too. I mean, the first one's kind of the same either way, but the other ones? Oh yeah, I'm sure these people in the apocalypse are going to care so much about your personal secrets. Oh look, you got all that money. Where the heck are you going to spend it? Heck, even Sakura's family dojo that she betrayed her friends in order to protect. I doubt that's still standing right now. I think what makes this twist really stand out is not only does it make you look at the game an entirely different way, but it means that all this bloodshed was to achieve a goal that everyone involved previously agreed was something to avoid. Now that's one hell of a curveball.
Would you kindly head to Ryan's office and kill the son of a bitch?
The moment I came up with this list, I already knew what number 1 was going to be. The twists in Danganronpa, Hotline Miami, and Broken Age were all brilliant, but they never stood a chance. And that's because number 1 on this list is the only twist that ever could have been number 1. You probably already know what twist I'm talking about and just don't realize it, so I'm going to give you a second to pause the video and try and guess what number 1's about to be. Got your prediction? I hope so, because I'm about to get into the real entry in 3, 2, 1. In Bioshock, you're traveling through the underwater city of Rapture, a mysterious and intriguing, yet dangerous and terrifying locale. In a strange and unfamiliar location like this, it would be nice to have someone guiding you around, and you get just that with Atlas. He's a nice, friendly person who wants to escape Rapture and needs your help doing so. However, the quest quickly turns from escaping Rapture to killing Andrew Ryan. I mean, there is a legitimate reason for this. Ryan is a madman and did blow up Atlas's family, but you know, that doesn't really explain why you're the one getting involved in all this. The answer to that's quite simple. you never had a choice. You see, the main character of the game, Jack, was genetically engineered in a lab. One of the key features of his genetic engineering was that he would do anything someone said if they used the phrase, "would you kindly?" And if you notice, Atlas uses that phrase quite a bit. He's been manipulating you this entire time. His name's not even Atlas. He's Andrew Ryan's old business rival, Frank Fontaine. It's pretty brilliant when you think about it. I mean, "would you kindly" is phrased like a question, as if you have a choice, when in reality you never did. The reveal was amazing too. I knew damn well about the twist years before I played Bioshock, and I was still mesmerized by the scene where Ryan lays it all out for you. However, those are all the reasons why this is a good twist, not why it's the best twist. The reason why it's the best is because of just how iconic it is. I typically don't go with the "it's popular because it's good" excuse, but I think this warranted an exception. Whenever you see stuff related to Bioshock, at least to the first game, online, one thing you're constantly going to be seeing is the quote, "would you kindly?" Now, have you ever seen a plot twist, not just in video games, but really in anything, get to that level of iconic? Now, your answer might have been no, but more likely, you probably said this.
Obi-Wan never told you what happened to your father.
He told me enough. He told me you killed him.
No, I am your father.
Now I think you're starting to see where I'm going with this. That right there is widely considered to be the best plot twist in cinema history. People are still talking about it to this day. So in case you haven't figured it out yet, I view "would you kindly" as the video game equivalent to Darth Vader being Luke's father. I mean, I don't think they have the same level of relevance in the cultural zeitgeist overall, but comparatively, given how many people watch movies versus how many people play video games, yeah, I do think they're comparable. But interestingly enough, this twist actually has a leg up on that one. It wasn't killed by its own popularity. With the Darth Vader twist, let's face it, it doesn't matter whether or not you've seen the movies, so long as you're over the age of 5 and have had pretty much any experience with American pop culture, you already know about it. With the Bioshock twist, on the other hand, even its popularity doesn't inherently spoil it. I mean, sure, the phrase "would you kindly" is a major part of the twist, but that doesn't tell you what the twist is. All it tells you is that "would you kindly" is an important phrase in the game. I'm Defoffilizer, and thank you so much for 20,000 subscribers. It took 6 years, but I finally got there. Now, would you kindly tell me what your favorite video game plot twist is?